Ladies and gentlemen everywhere, It's a God Thing radio program is on the air.
My God is a mountain mover. My God's gonna make a way. Can't count all the times he's proven. We can trust him, just have faith. Take a hopeless situation, watch him turn it all around. Nothing is impossible. I can't hold back. I gotta shout. My God, my God, my God is a mountain mover.
Yes, our God is a mountain mover, and you know what? He's still moving mountains every day. And the good news is he can move your mountains too. Hi there, this is Chuck Cooper, host of It's a God Thing radio program. Thank you for joining us today. We sure are glad you're here. You're about to listen to some awesome interviews with believers in Jesus Christ who will tell you how God has revealed and proved himself to them by moving mountains they were unable to move by themselves. They say that their stories can only be described as a God thing. Ready for a real blessing? Alrighty then, let's do this God thing. We are visiting by phone today with Howard Cannon, a member of First Baptist Church in Moss Bluff, Louisiana. At age 57, Howard had his first routine colonoscopy. His doctor informed Howard that he had stage 4 colon cancer. Listen now as Howard shares his incredible God thing story.
Well, thank you, Chuck, for letting me do this. It was 17 years ago. I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. In September the 7th, 2001 is not a date that I'll soon forget.
I'll bet.
It just started off that morning going for my first ever colonoscopy. And I'm going to tell you, at age 57, that is too late to have a first colonoscopy.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Well, let me ask you something. What was your reaction when the doctor told you the results of that colonoscopy?
Well, actually, they give you a shot that kind of puts you in Never Never Land, and I don't remember any of it. He came out and told my wife Sylvia what the diagnosis was, and the next thing I remember is being pushed down a corridor in Lake Charles Memorial Hospital, and the director of nursing, who was Becky Rhodes at that time, was a personal friend of ours. She was touching my hand saying, "Howard, it's going to be okay." And I thought, what's going to be okay? I just didn't have a clue,
yeah, right.
And so I woke up the next morning, and my wife Sylvia was standing there, and this doctor who was looking at me introduced himself as an oncologist. And he said, "I have some bad news for you and some good news." I said, "Well, what's the bad news?" He said, "Well, the bad news is you've got stage 4 colon cancer." I like had a stroke. I couldn't believe what he was saying.
I'll bet.
And he said the cancer had already exited my colon wall and was sitting on my lymph nodes.
Oh, my.
He said, "If you would have waited another 7 to 10 days, we'd be planning your funeral."
Oh,
And
my
I said, "My
God.
goodness." And he said, "That's the good news, that we got it early enough." He said, "The bad news, since just happened yesterday, we took out 18 inches of your colon, and you got to go through chemo." And when he said chemo, that just like floored me, because our family had never had cancer ever before. And so from having a carefree life, everything going smooth, I was working, teaching Sunday school, loving people, to a stormy outlook that I had no idea what I was going through. I just heard of other people having cancer, not me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it always happens to somebody else. I understand that too. Well, what was your reaction internally?
At first, it was fear. Not fear for me, but fear for my wife and child. My daughter Diane is mentally handicapped. She lives with us, and my first thought was, if I die, what's going to happen to Sylvia and Diane?
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he said, "The outlook is good, Mr. Cannon." He said, "I know this is a lot thrown on you and your wife," and he said, "but I think we've got it early enough." He said, on October the 8th, we're going to start your chemo. And that's my daughter's birthday, October the 8th.
Oh,
so
my.
Said, He said, we're going to start it right then. And so the outlook seemed kind of bleak to me because I'd seen other people that had gone through chemo and they were not pretty sights, and the struggles that they went through. And so everything went from being rosy and great to a storm. It looked like into the eyes of one of our hurricanes. How dark the clouds get.
Absolutely. Well, Howard, were you angry at God?
At first I was, Chuck. I thought, why would this happen to me? I was angry at God when my daughter was born 45 years ago. Today, I was angry. Of course, I wasn't a Christian then, so I didn't have any right to ask God anything. But at first, I was angry. I thought, man, I got my wife, I got Diane, I got to take care of it here. I could be on the brink of death. And then, just a couple of days later, it went from being angry at God to just thinking, well, we're just going to do what we have to do. My wife, just told me, look, we're going to get through this. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but let's just plan on getting through this. And so October the 8th, we started my chemo. And three days later, I'll never forget it, my wife fixed a chicken and sausage gumbo, which I could eat for breakfast. and I was so sick, I couldn't eat.
Oh, my.
3 days after starting my first round of chemo. And I was so sick I couldn't sleep. And one night I was laying there awake, thinking of a million things. And it's just like the Lord really reached out and spoke to me, and He said, Howard, I'm going to bring you through this storm.
Wow. How assuring is that, Howard?
Yeah, I was so sure. Listen, it was just like He was sitting on the edge of the bed. But sometimes when the Lord speaks to me, I'm so busy talking and saying things, I don't understand it. I don't hear it. But this time, Chuck, I was so sick. My lips were sticking together because of the chemo, and they were bleeding. And I had ulcers going down my throat. I couldn't even swallow an aspirin. I couldn't eat anything. And of course, going through all that, I couldn't sleep. And it's just like the Lord reached down and said, look, if you trust me, I want you to lean on me, and we're going to go through this together.
Wow.
And I promise you, Chuck, a peace came over me that I just can't even imagine. I never missed a day of work. I missed a week of work for my surgery, but when I started chemo, I still had to work.
Sure.
And I never missed a day of work. And the Lord was gracious to me because I went through chemo during the cooler months, October, November, December, January, and February. And I couldn't have made it during the summer. I couldn't have. But I never missed a day of work. So I'm not going to tell you it was easy because it wasn't easy. But I'm going to tell you what it was. It was God's promise to me that He was going to get me through that. And there were a lot of people praying for me, so many people encouraging me and helping me along the way. It was rough, it was rocky, and it was definitely some dark days, but I just knew that I was going to go through this, and God was going to use that in my life to encourage other people who are, in the days that I went through chemo, we was in a big room, Chuck, and there was probably about 8 or 10 people in there who were going through the same process, getting hooked up to that drug. And there were opportunities for me to witness to people about the Lord that didn't know Him, that were going through tough times. And so even in the midst of trials, God still used me to encourage other people. And my daughter's going through seizures, and she was having 10 or 15 seizures a day. Not grand mal seizures, but seizures enough to where she was standing up, she'd fall down, and it was a terrible time for that child. And my wife and I, and I was on my last week of chemo, Chuck, my last week, and Diane was going through all this time, and I remember saying, "Oh Lord, I can't take no more, and I'm still hurting, and my daughter is going through all these seizures,
My goodness.
I was on my way to work, and I felt terrible chest pains, like I couldn't believe. And in by rights, I should have pulled over and called 911, but I didn't. I drove about 3 miles to our nearest hospital. I brought myself into them, and they thought I was having a heart attack. But it was a chemo-induced stroke, Chuck.
Oh, my goodness.
That was on a Friday. That was going to be my last day of chemo. And they thought I was having a heart attack, but it was a chemo-induced stroke. I'd lost all feelings in both my arms. I didn't know people. I didn't recognize anybody. I couldn't, and I was when I come to my senses a little bit, they told me what had happened, and I remember telling God, I can't take any more. This happened, but I'm gonna show you how God works. That was on a Friday. On a Tuesday, they sent me home. My feeling in my arms came back. My ability to recognize people was right back to where it was before I had the stroke. I still had some weakness in my hands, but God spoke to me in the hospital, and He said, "I told you I was going to bring you through this."
Oh, my gosh.
It was unbelievable.
Boy,
Chuck, unbelievable.
I'll bet.
And while I was going through that chemo, I had a good friends, Jerry and Cindy Hall, that lived in Florida at that time, and I had a knock on my door, and my wife opened the door, and there was Leon and Cheryl Talbot and Jerry and Cindy Hall that had come all the way from Florida to see me and encourage me during that time.
Oh, man, what a blessing that must have been.
It really was, really encouraged me, and so the stroke, when I told God I couldn't take any more and He gave me a stroke, I said, "Lord, I'm not going to say that no more." I promise you. And so here I am 17 years later. I'm thankful that the Lord didn't let me see that whole picture, Joe.
Yes.
If I'd have seen the whole picture, the whole puzzle, it would have been devastating. But He let me see it one day at a time, and to witness His loving, miraculous power of what He was doing in my life and in my wife's life, and people we go to church with. There are a lot of people going through tough times today. I talked to a young lady in Walgreens just the other day who was going through some storms of life. Single mother, 3 children, one of them rebellious, and I just promised her that I'd pray for her, and that if she just trusted the Lord, and the night seems to be the darkest, that's when the light at the end of that tunnel is going to open up for her. And so God's taken a bleak time in my life to encourage people, to encourage me that He lives and He does miraculous things in people's lives, and He did that in mine.
Well, Howard, let me ask you a question. Do you now believe that what you went through, not only the cancer but also the stroke, do you believe that God has used those incidents, number one, to draw you closer to Him, and number two, to give you a personal ministry of encouragement?
Absolutely. Before then, I've always loved people. I taught a couple Sunday school class. I've always loved people. But when I went through that, and through the hell on earth, and the struggles, and how God brought me through that, God gave me a deeper love and understanding for people that are going through tough times in their life. And that just absolutely increased my ability to minister to people in that Sunday school class and other people that I've ministered to or come across in life. I asked God just to give me a small piece of what people are going through so I can understand their hurts and struggles. So God used that, in my life to help me love others better.
Are you totally cancer-free now?
Totally. I had a colonoscopy every year for 5 years, and every 2 years, and so the last 2 times that I went back, they said, "You're cancer-free." That's a lovely thought to hear that when they say you're cancer free.
Well, Howard, I've got another question I want to ask you. What advice would you give to people, both believers and not yet believers, who are suddenly informed that they have cancer, like you were? What advice would you give to them?
Well, first off, I just want to tell them that God's in control. I mean, especially to Christians, God's in control, and He will, if you trust Him, He's gonna. Either way, you're gonna win. You're gonna wake up in heaven, or you're gonna be killed for this. But either way, you win.
That's true.
And for non-Christians, that's really hard. The only thing they can do is see your testimony, how you act going through your struggles.
Yes.
And I just ask them to believe that God can do all things. I mean, God's used my daughter Diane to encourage a lot of people. She's 40. She'll be 46 next month. She's probably got an IQ of a first grader, maybe not that much. But she loves people, and God has used her love for God and love for. Listen, she learned a memory verse in Sunday school for special children. She learned a memory verse for every letter of the alphabet.
My goodness me.
I mean, people would come up to her in church and say, "What is J?" And she would tell them, "Jesus said unto them, I am the way and the truth and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me." And then she would say, John 14:6.
Well, my goodness. Well, good for her.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the only thing that kept her, she knew one from A to Z, but then she started having seizures at 18. And all that seizure medicine just interfered with her ability to put words together. And so, but yeah, and so I just tell people, look at somebody that's going through struggles and follow their pattern.
Oh boy, that's great. That is, that's super advice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And because we can be silent witnesses by the way we live our lives and the way we handle the frustrations.
That may be the only Bible someone will ever read.
Well, thank you, Howard, for sharing this very personal story of God's love and mercy, which has allowed you to serve Him in many ways ever since. Your story will certainly be an inspiration to all who hear it. May God continue to bless you and your family. Wow, what a great story. It's our hope that you have been inspired, encouraged, awed, and intrigued by what you heard today. We earnestly pray that hearing these stories as a regular listener to our program will be a source of hope and encouragement to you, that these stories will strengthen your faith in God and will lead you to a closer walk with Jesus. Whether you're a believer in Jesus Christ or a not yet believer, we pray that you will reflect on the God thing incidents in your own life and conclude that it was God at work and that He was knocking on your door. Now, let's get back to today's program. Has anyone ever blessed you by telling you that you are an answer to their prayers? Well, that happened to me for the very first time a few days ago, and I'd like to share that event with you now. I was waking up in my ICU hospital room following surgery on my right leg and was slowly coming back to reality from the anesthesia. My nurse Maria quickly proved to me that she is a very talented, attentive, and caring nurse with a visible servant's heart who was taking care of me. I was still in the process of coming off the effects of the anesthesia that afternoon and was talking like Chatty Cathy, but during the course of general conversation with Maria, I somehow sensed that she was a Christian. So, realizing that she was a captive audience, I boldly asked her point blank, "Maria, are you a Christian? Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" Smiling, her eyes brightened and she replied enthusiastically, "Why, yes, sir, I sure am, and I can tell you are too." So we discussed our spiritual backgrounds a bit as she continued with her duties. During that discussion, I mentioned that my sweet Sue and I had recently celebrated our 56th anniversary. Maria seemed awed by that milestone and temporarily stopped doing what she was doing. "Wow, that's so unusual these days," she said. "Congratulations." Well, for some then unknown reason, I continued. "People often ask us why we have been married so long, so we tell them it's for two reasons. First, it's because we made a vow to God, and keeping that vow is very important to us. And secondly, we both believe that each of us is a gift to each other directly from God. We now know what it means when the Bible says the two shall become one flesh. And, I laughed, we can even end each other's sentences. Well, with that, Maria moved close to my bed, eyes in full-blown tears. She choked a bit before saying, "Mr. Cooper, you are an answer to my prayers. Thank you for sharing that. You see," she explained, "I'm getting married in just 3 weeks, and I've been struggling with whether it's the right thing for me. Your words are very encouraging to me. Now I know how to let my fiancé know what I expect from our marriage." Maria continued, "I know now why I was assigned to you today. God is so amazing. He orchestrated things so I'd hear encouragement from you. I am so blessed." Well, with tears in my eyes, too, I answered, "Well, I have no clue why God chose me to be the one to encourage you, Maria, but He did. This is a special blessing for both." With that, Maria smiled sweetly and left the room to attend to another patient. Well, an hour or so later, she returned with discharge papers. Maria helped me stand from my bed, hugged me gently, whispered a soft thank you, and helped me into the wheelchair so the waiting attendant could take me downstairs to Sue in our car for the trip home. As I rolled away, Maria called out, "Well, thanks, Mr. Cooper. I'll never forget you." And I shouted back, "Good luck," and was rolled into the elevator. But this story doesn't end here. On the way home, Sweet Sue and I marveled at what God had done in that encounter with Maria. He put her in the right place at the right time to receive the encouragement she had prayed for. And He put us in the right place at the right time to be an encouragement to her. Frankly, I am very humbled to be used by God in this way. Since then, I've often asked, "Well, why we, Lord?" He answered that question through Sweet Sue, who said to me, "Well, why not you? God gave you the words and experience that Maria needed to hear." Well, our lesson learned is this. As believers, we have an obligation to be willing to be used by God to fulfill His works. He can and will use us, and that includes you, in any number of ways. I pray that you will be willing to submit to His urging and to do exactly what He asks you to do. I sure don't want you to miss a true blessing because you failed to heed Him. Now, hey, Mr. Producer, will you give us a drum roll, please? And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Sweet Sue with another of her inspirational readings.
This one is called A Plea for Forgiveness. Good morning, Lord. It's me, America. I come to your altar to ask forgiveness. I've changed so much since you created me, I'm not sure you recognize me. Over the past half-century, I've spiraled out of control. Your word is no longer prevalent over my land. I've become prideful in myself, forgetting all my blessings that have come from you. We have done away with all sin. We have given them new names. They are still here, but we became uncomfortable with the word sin. Murder is now known as pro-choice. Adultery, fornication, and premarital sex is now known as sexual freedom. Gay no longer means happy. We don't just tolerate these actions, we promote them. My airways are full of filth, far worse than Sodom was. I tremble with fear that I may be late realizing that I need you back. I know I throw a quick prayer up when some nut goes on a rampage or a natural disaster strikes, but for the most part, as you know, I try to fix it all by myself. Against your word, we no longer allow parents to correct kids. I do that to the unruly ones later by putting them in prison and giving them a Bible. We have built convenient homes for our parents, veterans, and those who can't care for themselves. I know you said we should care for our own until death, for they gave us life, but God, we have no time for that. I've hushed those who proclaim you, but created hate laws to protect those who hate you. The collection plates are empty, for most spend it all on social media devices and keeping up with the Joneses. We have created so many false gods. Money always has been one, but now we have lifted actors, singers, and sports way above you. I beg your forgiveness and ask for your help and guidance in my repenting. God, please come back to me. I can't do this alone. I'm sorry I have broken your heart. From the most blessed yet blinded country you've ever created, the United States of America.
Wow, what a great half hour this has been. Tune in next time for more great God Thing stories, and tell all your friends to tune in too. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you or someone you know has a verifiable story which needs to be told, please email a brief summary to us at mystory@itsagodthingradio.com. That's my story, all one word, at itsagodthingradio.com. See you next time.